For a long time, El Chapo had preferential treatment everywhere he went, even prison.
Lo que me llama la atención es que el reo que dicen que es el Chapo tiene cabello. Todos los días tienes que afeitar.
He escaped prison twice, so when he was arrested a third time, Mexico had him shipped to the US. He would get a life imprisonment sentence at the most secure prison on earth. But even now, authorities are on high alert. 5 years into his sentence, Chapo is still trying to escape.
Prison authorities said there was too much risk that the cartel boss would be picked off by a sniper or would stage a helicopter escape.
ADX Florence can't be left through a tunnel or mountains of bribes. So how is El Chapo planning to leave this terrifying place? And is it really as horrific as he describes it? Let's explore Chapo's life in prison today. In 2017, El Chapo was extradited to New York to face the bitter consequences of his unspeakable crimes. He was in a New York prison for 2 years, until his trial concluded and he was sentenced to life in prison at the Florence Supermax Federal Prison. During those 2 years, he complained a lot. Guzman made a rare public statement at his sentencing, chastising authorities for conditions at New York's Metropolitan Correctional Center that he equated with torture. He said he was denied access to sunlight and forced to drink unsanitary water. He said he had to use wadded-up toilet paper as earplugs to sleep amid noise from an air vent near his cell. Funny, he should use the word torture. During his year-long trial in New York, several of his former bodyguards testified against him, and their stories made people in the courtroom gasp and cry. Reportedly, Chapo took pleasure in handling his enemies with his own hands.
He had burns made with an iron on his back. His shirt was stuck to his skin. He had burns made with a car lighter all over his body. His feet were burned.
After torturing this poor man for information about a rival cartel, El Chapo kept him in a sort of wooden chicken coop for days on end. He interrogated him, but the man wouldn't say what El Chapo wanted to hear. So El Chapo would fire into him repeatedly, but not fatally. He would bury him alive a few days later. Another time, El Chapo received a gift from his sicarios, 2 Los Zetas men. El Chapo personally beat them for hours until they were as limp as rag dolls.
They were completely like rag dolls. Their bones were totally broken. They could not move. And Mr. Joaquin was still hitting them with the branch, and his weapon too.
Meanwhile, El Chapo had his sicarios prepare the men's deaths.
Guzman ordered his men to dig a hole, Valdez said, and fill it with wood and get a fire going. Then, tying the Zetas to the back of 2 ATVs, they drove the prisoners to the edge of the pit and dumped them on the ground.
And in 2010, El Chapo unalived another rival cartel member named Hugo Hernandez. Then he cut off his face and sewed it to a soccer ball. The rest of his body was found in several tiny pieces in various ice chests placed throughout Los Mochis. His message was for the authorities.
Happy New Year, because this will be your last.
Sometimes we wonder how a horror filmmaker can come up with such gruesome ideas, but then you realize some people do this in real life and get a kick out of it. But now, El Chapo was complaining about his deplorable conditions inside the New York prison. His lawyers wrote,
"The prolonged deprivation of sunlight and fresh air over a staggering 27-month span has inflicted psychological scars. He exhibits numerous signs of distress due to this protracted, unjustified punishment. Guzman has additionally reported enduring daily headaches and ear discomfort."
The lawyers also complained that he was being kept away from his wife, Emma Coronel Aispuro, and his 2 twin daughters. His basic rights were being infringed, he said. It was, of course, a plea to get Chapo free or put him in a lower security facility. But after the prosecution went through Chapo's horrendous crimes and a year of shattering testimonies, there was no mercy for the drug lord. He was sentenced to life without parole at the Florence Supermax, or ADX Florence, in Colorado, and ordered to pay $12 billion in restitution, and conditions would only get rougher at the country's highest security prison. Before he was shipped off, Chapo said,
"Since the government will send me to a jail where my name will not ever be heard again, I take this opportunity to say there was no justice here. It has been psychological and mental torture 24 hours a day."
On July 19th, 2019, El Chapo arrived at his ADX Florence prison cell. He is now inside the same prison as the Unabomber, the Oklahoma City bomber, the Boston Marathon bomber, and 9/11 conspirator Zacarias Moussaoui. These are super high-profile inmates who are considered extra dangerous and prone to escaping. Located in a former mining town 2 hours south of Denver, Supermax is ensconced by razor wire barriers and watchtowers, manned with armed guards and vigilant canines. Inmates endure near total isolation, spending 23 hours a day within their cells. Their meager human contact is limited, with a mere 4-inch window offering a glimpse into the desolate surroundings encompassing the 380-man facility. Ex-warden Cameron Lindsay said,
Supermax is austere, and it is run with absolute structure and security in mind. From an operational perspective, it's the most secure prison on Earth. I would have been shocked if they designated Chapo anywhere else.
The prison's current warden openly admitted,
The experience there is like life after death. Or should I say, life there is worse than death.
It is said that around a third of the Florence Supermax inmates suffer from severe mental illnesses, but after spending day after day in solitary confinement, the other 2/3 might discover some new mental health issues too. A 2012 lawsuit against the ADX stated,
It was alleged that years of isolation and almost no human contact had seriously eroded the social skills and the ability to adapt to ADX Florence inmates.
looking out the tiny window in your cell, you can only see the sky. That way, no inmate ever knows where their cell is or where they're located around the prison. There are several accounts of ADX Florence inmates screaming for hours or hurting themselves as they lose their minds inside their tiny cells. Some mutilate their bodies with razors, shards of glass, sharpened chicken bones, writing utensils, and whatever other objects they can attain. A number swallow razor blades, nail clippers, parts of radios and television, broken glass, and other dangerous objects. DEA Special Agent Ray Donovan explained why there is little mercy for these people, including El Chapo.
This is the kind of fate that a man responsible for unspeakable violence and death deserves. Thousands of people died or were ordered killed because of the Sinaloa cartel. So yeah, he doesn't leave his cell. It is boring, it's monotonous, it is very sad, but here's the difference. He's alive, and that means he could do plenty of things, unlike many of his victims.
But Chapo has already escaped prison twice back in Mexico, and it's safe to say that 5 years into his lifelong sentence, he is even more desperate to get out of this one. Are the rumors true?
Rob, the El Chapo escape fears are not unfounded. He tunneled out of the last Mexican prison where he was locked up and rode to freedom on an underground motorcycle. That was his second escape. Tonight, the I-Team has a letter from El Chapo in which he implies that U.S. prison officials are bullying him because he has escaped before.
Since its inception in 1994, no one escaped ADX Florence. It's one of the reasons people call it the Alcatraz of the Rockies. But if anyone will, it's probably El Chapo. When he rose through the ranks of the Guadalajara cartel in the 1980s, he did so using his master tunneler skills. Chapo's state-of-the-art tunnels created new, longer, more secure smuggling routes to carry narcotics from Mexico into the United States. And when Chapo founded his own cartel, tunnels became one of the Sinaloa's greatest trademarks. And these tunnels also came in handy after Chapo's arrests. In 1993, he was arrested and sentenced to 20 years in prison. But in 2001, fearing stricter extradition laws, he escaped in a prison laundry cart after bribing prison officials around $2.5 million. El Chapo went on to live on the run for 13 years before he was tracked down and arrested again in 2014. He was sent to a maximum security prison in Mexico, but bribery and a giant fortune meant El Chapo could get away again. He used a team to build an underground tunnel under his prison cell shower. The tunnel led to a vacant property that had just been purchased by his wife. He was building another tunnel with his guard in January 2016 when he was caught, arrested, and shipped off to New York. So it's safe to say, authorities are on high alert, even with Chapo in the most secure prison on Earth. In July 2023, he wrote a letter to Judge Brian Cogan, who sentenced him to life imprisonment at the Florence Supermax.
Chapo says prison authorities are preventing him from receiving attorney documents for new court motions. They always use the excuse that it's because Guzman fled from a Mexican prison, he writes. This is a ridiculous claim used to justify the anomalies.
Is Chapo really denying escaping from prison twice? There is literally footage of it. Perhaps he is calling the claims ridiculous to point out that his escapes are not a legit reason to deny him the documents. When the prison is high security, the only chance to escape is in an unusual situation: the hospital, the courtroom, or the rooftop. And yes, there is another risk apart from an inmate escaping. Cartels are never happy when a sicario, or worse, a boss, is caught. They fear the inmate will testify against them for a more lenient sentence. This is what happened in El Chapo's case. Why do you think so many of his ex-guards testified against him? They were already in prison, serving long sentences for trafficking, extortion, kidnapping, and even murder. If they had a few words about El Chapo, they could get deals with the FBI and maybe even be released under witness protection. Cartel inmates are often targets, and Cameron Lindsay said, "This is very likely for El Chapo too."
To kill a high-security inmate is a badge of honor. He will see total isolation for the public's safety and security, as well as his own.
It's Donald Trump versus the fugitive drug lord El Chapo. The presidential candidate is in an international war of words with the infamous Mexican gangster who is on the run after escaping from prison.
El Chapo's escape history is famous, and so are his conflicts with American authorities. This is not the first time Chapo has written letters to judges, officials, and even presidents, threatening, accusing, and trying to obtain a get-out-of-jail-free card. And 1 month after writing his letter to Judge Brian Cogan, he wrote another one. This time, he complained about being denied family visits. Guzman wrote that the prosecutors were opposed to her visiting me in New York because they believed she could pass threatening messages to the witnesses. He maintained that this was ridiculous, since all conversations during the visits are recorded. It's funny how El Chapo keeps using the word ridiculous in his letters. Even his pleas come off as threats. His whole life, he was used to getting preferential treatment and simply unaliving those he did not like. Now, he can't stand this. During his first prison sentence between 1993 and 2001, Chapo had chef-made food, cigarettes, and alcohol brought to his cell every single day. He could even lead his infamous Sinaloa cartel over the prison phone, much like Pablo Escobar from his hotel-like prison. Even during his second prison stint at Altiplano, one of Mexico's highest security prisons, Chapo received preferential treatment. An ex-inmate at Altiplano explained why.
Lo que me llama la atención es que el reo que dicen que es el Chapo tiene cabello. Todos los días tienes que afeitarte. Te rapan casi cada 20 días, 15 días. Ahí no se discute, ¿eh? Nadie discute nada.
The fact that Chapo was not made to shave his head, like the other prisoners, goes to show he still had some level of power over the warden and the guards. Plus, how could he have escaped if he didn't? Without several guards protecting him and his cartel people while they dug, there is no way El Chapo could have escaped. Yet the Mexican government insisted no one was bribed in this case.
Parece que es una burla a la sociedad el que nos los quieran presentar de esta manera, porque si no le abrieron la puerta, le abrieron un túnel. La principal responsabilidad es de Peña Nieto, de Osorio Chong, del secretario de Seguridad, de la Procuradora, de la Coordinadora General de los FRS. Ellos son los principales responsables.
In the US, Chapo knows bribing wardens is not possible, so he has to go another way. Multiple pleas to the government and judges might ensure a retrial, or at least a transfer, which could put him in a scenario where escape is possible. And Chapo's wife, Emma Coronel, seems to lend a helping hand.
Nosotros lo que pedimos es que lo atiendan y que apliquen los derechos humanos con él.
During El Chapo's New York trial, Emma was at the courtroom every day, sporting luxury outfits, smiling at the cameras, and blowing kisses to her husband from across the room. Some people said, of course, she was a supporting wife. Emma herself said that.
Bueno, yo pienso que es lo que haría cualquier esposa en mi lugar, ¿no? Estar con su esposo en momentos difíciles que son lo que está pasando en este momento.
Other people saw her flashy outfits and center of attention behavior as a sort of farewell to Chapo. Perhaps she'd resented him for a long time. Perhaps she finally felt free from him. Emma threw lavish parties for her twin girls and even appeared in a documentary talking about being a kingpin's wife. Such things are a big no-no as far as cartels stand. Emma could be seen as a rat. Also, she is flashing her wealth in front of American authorities, while everyone knows how she acquired that wealth. It's Chapo's blood money. According to journalist Annabelle Hernandez, Emma was getting her revenge on Chapo. El Chapo was seriously unfaithful to Emma, the opposite of what she was to him. She protected him, covered for his crimes, helped him escape, and put herself in harm's way for him. And yet, he continued to sleep with other women and commit heinous crimes every single day. So the minute Emma realized her husband would never leave prison again, she decided to make him see what he was losing. Even during his trial, Emma was seen smiling outside the courtroom and engaging in pleasant chats with the reporters. She wasn't sad about her husband's ordeal. She was happy to be in the center of attention, to steal his thunder. Throughout Chapo's trial, Emma gave interviews and said she wanted her husband treated more fairly. However, People noticed how she stood there expressionless as the most horrific testimonies were told. Emma knew everything, and when she was asked about the testimonies, she accused the witnesses of lying.
Pero pues obviamente hay que recordar que esas son personas que les dieron vida, ¿no? Entonces pues ellos van a decir cualquier cosa o para tener algún beneficio, entonces pues no me clavo mucho en esas cosas. Claro que sí, de repente me molestan, como cualquier persona, ¿no? Que estén diciendo cosas de una persona cuando tú sabes lo contrario, entonces.
However, the prosecution would reveal text messages between Chapo and Emma, casually discussing Sinaloa crimes and even joking that their kids would soon join its ranks.
Our Kiki is fearless. I'm going to give her an AK-47 so she can hang with me.
It wasn't long before something else was uncovered. Remember where Chapo's prison escape tunnel led to? That's right, a property bought by Emma Coronel. She had arranged her husband's escape, among other things. Shortly after her husband was sent off to Colorado, Emma Coronel was arrested and sentenced to 3 years in prison.
The wife of drug kingpin El Chapo has been released from a Long Beach halfway house. Emma Aispuro was convicted in 2021 of drug trafficking and money laundering.
It's likely Emma will now try to keep as low a profile as possible, after flaunting her wealth and possibly testifying against El Chapo for a more lenient sentence. The Sinaloa cartel will be after her. In his letter to the judge, El Chapo said Emma would be able to visit him after September 13, 2023, when her detention ends and she will be able to travel anywhere in the country. So Emma Coronel is still in the US, and it's unlikely she will ever return to Mexico. However, ADX Florence is still strictly against allowing Emma to visit her husband. Authorities still believe she could be one of Chapo's best bets at escaping the prison. In January of last year, El Chapo tried going another way too. He wrote a letter to Mexico's president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, begging him to allow to serve the rest of his sentence in Mexico. According to one of his lawyers, José Refugio Rodríguez, Guzman is unhappy with the harsh prison conditions, including isolation and a lack of sunlight. The message, described as an SOS, was transmitted via one of Guzman's lawyers in the United States, as well as his family. He hopes to return to face outstanding charges and complete his sentence in Mexico under a prison agreement between the two countries. The president told reporters he would review Chapo's plea, adding, "The door must always be left open when it comes to human rights." This statement came as a shock to many. If Obrador accepts Chapo's plea, it almost feels like Chapo is fooling him again. Escaping from Mexican prisons was too easy. It's hard not to think that this is why El Chapo wants to serve the rest of his sentence in his home country. Mexican Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard, however, said it's highly unlikely that his plea will be taken seriously.
Frankly, I don't see any possibilities for him, but I'm going to review it with the prosecutor's office.
Cameron Lindsay put it plainly.
He ain't going anywhere, brother. He's not going anywhere.
While El Chapo is fighting tooth and nail to get out of ADX Florence, he spends all his days alone in his small cell, watching the sky through a tiny window, and the 1 hour a day that he gets rack time. He's cuffed and shackled, alone with a guard. Even his torso is chained, so he doesn't run, jump, or do anything unpredictable. Phones are also off the table. In fact, the only kind of technology available is the small black and white TV set in their cell. And inmates only receive this TV if they demonstrate good behavior over a long period of time. El Chapo gets to watch TV if he behaves, but the prison selects the programs, so no streaming or HD TV. Chapo doesn't even get to shower when he wants. The shower is automatically turned on for all inmates at the same time, 3 times a week. And as he complained, he is also sleep deprived. The bed is a concrete slab, topped with a thin mattress and a blanket. Some lights stay on throughout the night, and there are noises happening almost all of the time. Not to mention that, every now and then, he might hear a fellow inmate driven insane by isolation, screaming, crying, or calling the guards. Food is delivered straight to his cell. He eats alone 3 times a day and is not allowed to talk to other inmates down the hall. ADX Florence allows up to 5 visits a month, but they have to be justified and approved by the warden. And here's the thing, the Alcatraz of the Rockies was built especially for escape-prone convicts, so the warden is super cautious with visits for all inmates. Chapo tops the list. Few other inmates have escaped prison twice. All authorities are on high alert whenever Chapo tries to do something, and as of April 2024, he has made several attempts to escape the Florence Supermax. Indeed, it's not through a tunnel or bribery, but through letters. Urgent pleas to judges, presidents, and high-ranking officials claim his mental and physical health are declining. His solution? Send me to a lower security prison, or allow my wife to visit. For now, authorities remain skeptical. El Chapo's life in prison is truly terrifying. But isn't this the inevitable fate of a man who rained hell on thousands of people? Hey, thanks for watching. What are your thoughts on El Chapo's situation, and do you think he will ever get out of ADX Florence? Leave a comment. And before you go, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell button. See you next time.